Remember the 2020 riots? I sure do. But although 2020 is now in the past, Antifa's not going anywhere. They are still the cowardice foot soldiers for the Democrat Party, who hide behind their black masks to conceal their identity while committing acts of violence. And rather than condemn them in the strongest possible terms, the left simply tries to convince the public that they don't even exist. But my next guest, he can tell you firsthand that Antifa does exist. He's been relentlessly threatened, attacked. He's even been hospitalized by their members. And he claims that they are more dangerous now than ever before. I'd like to welcome to the program a man who represents the true epitome of journalism, editor-at-large for the Post-Millennial and author of the book Unmasked, Inside Antifa's Radical Plan to Destroy Democracy. Andy Ngo, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me here.
Andy, you have been reporting some pretty alarming updates about Antifa's plans as of late. I know they're now claiming a month-long string of violent attacks. Can you explain further what's going on here?
Yeah, so about 48 hours ago, the North American headquarters of Adidas in Portland, Oregon, was smashed up. The attack was a little bit shocking in that this is facility that you think would be highly secured, given that it's such a large corporation. But multiple windows were smashed and there was a lot of vandalism. Nobody was arrested. According to the Portland police, there were 9 people who were wearing dark clothing and masks carrying out the attack. Now, there's an Antifa anarchist website that has put out a claim of responsibility. The website's called Abolition Media. And in it, the attack is said to be retribution for the World Cup's involvement with capitalism. And it cites Qatar's human rights record, but mostly the main grievance is that the World Cup is a way for capitalism to spread around the world. And so the group that published a claim of responsibility also then calls for a whole month long of attacks on other corporate sponsors of the World Cup. The irony, though, is that many of these sponsors that are now being targets of Antifa were the same ones who donated tens and tens of millions of dollars to the adjacent far-left movement, BLM, back in 2020.
Andy, I want to ask you about something because I know that you receive a ton of threats, and I'd like to get your response to the left's response to the tragic shooting in Colorado that we saw over the weekend. They're, of course, blaming the MAGA movement for this horrific event. And clearly this hatred comes from all sides of the political aisle. Isn't that right?
Yes, I think the blame that they do is going to be there whether or not there is evidence. And so far, law enforcement has not indicated anything of an ideological motive. That remains to be seen. I'm not saying that there isn't an ideological component. But whenever, for example, there have been attacks carried out by so-called protected categories, the left is very, very quick to condemn anybody who dares to draw an ideological link. And sometimes it's a link that exists to the explicit rhetoric of left-wing politicians and left-wing activists. For example, when law enforcement officers are killed by Black nationalist BLM militants.
Andy, I've followed you since we first saw the riots that the left called mostly peaceful back in 2020, and I've really admired your reporting, your relentless fight for the truth. I really mean it when I say that you're the epitome of journalism, and you've been hospitalized by Antifa, continuously threatened, but somehow you continue to stay the course. Why is that? What keeps driving you, and what gave you this fearlessness?
I think... Well, first, thank you for your kind words. I guess I continue doing this because the truth is that important. And if the militant far left is targeting me, perhaps that means they're not going to be targeting some innocent mother or teen or child or some other American who doesn't have a platform to speak out and to report about when they are victimized. So in some ways, I'm motivated by those who don't have a voice to continue doing what I do. But I am afraid that there's going to be an intensification of their tactics, because with some of their rhetoric online, there is sort of this implosion that's happening in reaction to Elon Musk, for example, purchasing Twitter, unbanning a lot of their targeted accounts, because now a lot of their ideas and claims, which before the opposition wasn't really allowed because it would be banned. Now their ideas have to be debated and confronted on social media, and they're lashing out like crazy, and they're issuing a lot of death threats.
Andy, I want to ask you about this before we go. The left loves to say that it's Republicans that are the extremists. Meanwhile, it's their party that really has a long history of extremism. It was 100 years ago that the nation's first woman senator, her name was Rebecca Felton, she was sworn into office. She was reportedly a white supremacist who supported lynchings. She was a clear-cut racist. She was also a Democrat, 87 years old when she was sworn in. I guess some things never change in that category. But the Democrat Party's history really points to a number of them being the real racists and the real people inciting violence. Would you agree?
Well, it's perhaps because of the Democrat Party's history that contemporary Democrats feel like they have to go into overdrive to focus direct attention elsewhere on the other side. At the end of the day, I don't think it's really helpful to say which side is worse than the other, because this is not a race to the bottom. Certainly, my main issue with the Democrats, though, is their role in refusing to acknowledge that far-left extremism exists, first of all. And when far-left violent extremism manifests, they gaslight the rest of us by saying that organized Antifa or organized violent BLM doesn't exist, in spite of the evidence in front of our eyes.
And oftentimes we see them fanning the flames, I have to say. Andy, we have to leave it there, but really appreciate the great work that you do. Please continue to stay safe, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
All right, folks, so the midterm